Hey folks, welcome to another update for Avorkarth, the 7th, I believe. I'll be structuring the videos a bit differently now, adding the information in a list. So we'll start off at the first part, which is updates to the visuals. Alright, let's start off the game. Already a massive difference from last time, as you can see. The UI is now less in the way of the player. This is probably going to be the final take for a while. I'm very happy with how it is right now. The unit stats have been condensed into the corner with only the important ones in the side. I'll go over that once I get to the gameplay section. But visually speaking, the full stats are still available to see, but they're able to be hidden as well now. On the right side, I have the unit list as usual, but now instead of having an additional button which lowered the UI to cover even more space, the units are shown just with a simple click of a button. On the bottom, the path, instead of just being a floating part, I tried making it pop out more as a UI instead of just being a basic imagery on the screen. It should make it more obvious that it's interactable. Same thing, I added little yellow swirly things. I don't know a better name for it, so I'll just call them yellow swirly things around the possible choices. Hopefully to drag the player's attention, much like the circle around the current area. Speaking of the current area, the map has changed slightly, and the wood grain of the table is now much better. It's still a painted texture. I want everything in this game to be hand-painted. This is a lot cleaner, hopefully, than the previous one, which had a bunch of levels. Still going to need some thinking once I do get further down the line of production of content with more levels, but for the demo, this is fine, as there's only going to be 2 main levels, the Human Castle and then the Cobalt Caves. So before this month of work, everything in the game was done purely as a 2D texture and with an emissive quality, meaning that light didn't affect it. It was just a 2D texture that was shown and that had its own lighting. So whatever I painted in Photoshop would show up exactly as it was. And though that was good, it didn't allow me to do good granular feel, so to speak, without a lot of work. The lighting gives me a tiny bit more, and it will allow me to also move the lighting as the camera moves around. It's not really visible here, but the objects will shine a tiny bit as if there were a proper source of light, or your eyes changing to the direction of the source of light of everything. So lighting changes overall, and that would explain why, let me choose a path, the clouds are all of a sudden a lot brighter than previously. The clouds are being affected by an actual lighting now instead of just being a 2D texture. In some places it looks better, in others it's more obvious that this is a really quick shown 2D texture. You can tell here, especially where there's just a flat line once every while that appears. But it's fine, it's fine. Also noted in the visual changes is that units now have proper selection circles, easier to tell when something is being highlighted over, and they have little models. So the Cobalt Scavenger, as seen in the picture, is a little cobalt with a knife. These will probably change. I'm still far off from this polish. I was focusing mainly on the UI, but every unit has its own little icon, a bit like a Warhammer or other similar style miniature with a base and an icon. Will these be animated? Probably not. Let's see where it goes from there. Anyways, on to section 2. So the gameplay of Avorkarth hasn't changed much. In terms of combat and level selection and all that, it's still just choose a path, go, spawn your units, defeat the enemy units. You win! Congratulations! Woohoo! But the major changes has come into refining the unit stats. So I'm now getting to the point that most of the stats are incorporated. Compared to previous iterations, you'll notice that there are now weapons and armors and all that kind of fancy things. Most of the stats also have a nice little hover over to tell you what it is. So we have turns per round, strike backs, which is actions against the unit, whenever they are attacked, if they have one. Morale would be a unit's willingness to fight and to stay on the field, which is affected by the units around itself. We have fatigue, which, if I start the fight, you'll notice goes down whenever a unit takes action. So it was at 100, now it's down 92. The stats of a unit will drop the further their fatigue goes to 0, and that will be the indication of the rest button. Most of these are not yet active either, still only the defend button, but I'm getting there. On the soldier, for example, the current highlighted unit, we have the orange bar is going to be, this one's not yet implemented, the current unit's health bar. So whichever unit, so let's just say there's 5 of them, it will be the next one to perish. That will be its health bar. The red health bar underneath is the total health of the squad. So there's 5 out of 15. 5 times the wounds per unit, which is down here, equals to 7 times 5 of 35. You'll notice that the knight, even those 2 of them, they have 8 wounds each, hence 16. Cool. Blue bar is mana. I am not implementing casters until a way long way down. So I'm not worried about that. So moving on to the main stats of the unit, this one, core stats. We have the wounds of the unit, so how many wounds per unit. The stamina, which it's a bit awkward, but how it functions is that the stamina of the unit is what reduces the fatigue and also increases it. Whenever a unit does an action, they'll use up 15 minus their own stamina bar. Hence why it went down to 92 for the knight. 8 is 15 minus 7. Should a knight rest, they would gain equal to their stamina again. Caster level and reserve per unit, that's all caster stuff. Skipping that. Initiative, how fast are they on the initiative list? I may add a slight randomization to it. Not sure just yet. Roll the d6, add the initiative, and then it'll go on the list. It'll allow maybe for a bit more complexity in the combat. Anyhow, ground movement, well, that shows how many tiles they can move. Water and air movement, not even worried about that. That's way down the line. Resolve and presence is what is used for the morale of a unit. So, oh, interesting. That's bugged. Yes, the resolve unit, is their own willpower, and the presence is how much they affect the enemy around them. So I was talking earlier of the morale, how it's the units around it. Those would be the Y. Inspiration, the third one, doesn't have a highlight over because I'm not sure if I want it in or not, but it would be units presence for allies only. In concept, it's cool. The idea of the hero, the heroic knight being braver whenever his fair maiden is threatened, kind of thing. So the fair maiden would have a higher inspiration towards units around it. They have a higher willpower whenever they're near that unit. I'm not sure if I'll keep it, but it is part of the rule set I created for Avorkarth. So see how it implements. Weaponry and armor has now been slotted, so if a unit down the line is going to probably have more than one weapon. Ranged units is what I'm thinking of clearly, where a bowman would have their bow and maybe a dagger, so that if they're attacked in melee, they're a lot less useful than if they attack at range. For now, just going to keep it as is. So we have the weapon range, 1 tile. The accuracy is countered against the dodge of the opponent. The might is countered against the armor of the opponent, and the damage is how much damage is dealt should everything go right. In terms of armor, as I noted, the dodge and the armor. So armor now has a penalty towards dodge, so the knight, for example, can't dodge at all. He will always be hit. But he has a fantastic armor value, so the chances of an enemy wounding him are very small. However, what I'm going to implement, it's not in yet, but what I'm going to implement is that armor degrades per attack. So it's a fantastic buffer, but it isn't as useful as dodge in the long run. Dodge, however, is going to be countered by the amount of units attacking it. So if there's only 1 unit left and they're attacked by 8, their dodge value is going to suffer tremendously. That's not yet been implemented. For now, I just focused on the weapons and armor. Anyways, to better show this, I'm going to stop the game right now. This is also part of the gameplay update where the unit is now... How I had started off previously is that the unit was a set of stats based on race. I'm now going even further. So everything is calculated as if I were creating a character in, say, D&D or an RPG Maker. So it has base stats and then weapon mastery, combat mastery, buffs of sorts. For example, the knight has the buff of horse. Very creative name, I know. Fatigue, weapons, armor, wounds, visibility, how many units is visible, don't worry about that. Set stats, right? So everything is stats. Morale, fatigue, wounds, might, accuracy, all that kind of stuff. It's very much like an RPG unit condensed into a tabletop unit. So that allows me to create units really quickly later on once everything is implemented. As you can tell from what's on the screen right now, I've only incorporated what's absolutely necessary to test and create this demo, but I'll be adding more. And for those curious as to what more will be added, there's the Avorkarth manual on my website, avorkarth.ca. Anyways, on to section 3, which is content. There's no new content yet. I'm still working through, as noted, all the stats are still being implemented and minor rules are still being edited and created. So the morale and fatigue, while fatigue is in, I don't have the rest button implemented, for example. While morale is technically in, the units detect other units around it and calculate their morale, it doesn't actually go up and down theoretically. It's not functioning according to how it should. There's still a lot of work to be done. Nonetheless, if all that doesn't bother you, there is a demo of the game available for free, and I'll put the link below in the description. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope you all have a good one. Thanks again. Cheers.